Hi, writer. Want my support to get your book finished and out into the world? Join my Inner Circle membership, a community of supportive writers where each month we set goals, share pages, learn new techniques, and get you unstuck fast so that you can make continuous progress on your writing goals. Coached Writers Finish. And you can get me as your virtual book coach in this group program for only $199 a month, much less than a single one-on-one coaching session. Check out the details at suzyvidori.com/inner circle. We have live events happening all the time, so grab your spot now to join us. Welcome to the Show Don't Tell Writing Podcast with me, Suzy Vidori, where I peel back the layers of how to wow your readers with your fiction, your nonfiction. Anybody can bang out a first draft, but it takes a little more work to make your book as amazing as it can be. Join me as I share the step-by-step writing techniques you could apply to your writing right away, as I host successful writers who share a behind-the-scenes look at their own writing lives, and as I live coach writers on their pages, giving practical writing examples that will make your own writing stronger. Nobody is born knowing how to write an engaging book. There are real and important skills that you need to learn. On this show, I cut through the noise and get you all the info you need. I can't wait to see how this information is going to transform your writing. Today on the Show Don't Tell Writing podcast, we're going to do some live coaching with Stacy Burch. I met Stacy through a contest at Writers Helping Writers, and she submitted one page from her newest work that she's working on, which is called One of the Kind. It's a middle grade magical realism novel, and it features Una Oliver, which is so much fun. And the town that the actual middle grade novel is set in is called Puke. And if that doesn't do a lot of show don't tell writing, I don't know what does. This is such a fun episode. Stacy shared a page where Una meets a lot of the friends that she's going to go through her journey with. And as well, there's some backstory that we have to deal with. So this page has to do so much work, and it was jumping around a little bit. So if you've got a page or a section in your book where you know that you need the reader to have information, but it just feels a little bit dry, listen to this episode because we have tons and tons of ideas of how to jazz that section up and use show don't tell writing to make it really pop. Stacy is actually a traditionally published children's author already for books ranging from picture books to middle grade novels. And her debut picture book, Away with Words, came out in August of 2022. And her second picture book, Searching for Sleep, came out in October of 2022. And they're both available to order. She earned her BA in English and a BS in secondary education in Pittsburgh. And as a high school English teacher for more than 10 years, she happily created stories, edited papers, and fostered budding young minds before receiving her own Master's of Arts in Secondary English Curriculum Design from Shepherd University in Shepherdstown. Stacy and her husband moved to Brussels, Belgium, where they were fortunate to travel the world. During this time, Stacy worked at the College of Advertising and Design before returning to the USA. Thanks to their passion for regenerative agriculture, Stacy, her husband, and their 3 young children are hoping to start a sustainable family mini farm. When not writing stories, chasing kids, or freelance editing, Stacy presents virtually and in person on various topics such as the creative writing process, curriculum design for the modern child, and, of course, her books. This is a super fun episode. I think you're really going to enjoy it and learn a ton. Here's the one page that Stacy submitted that we're about to review today. Una normally avoided Nons so they wouldn't see the magic inside her, and she'd only ever met one other kind her age, the bucktooth and bratty Artie Boyles, whose catcher was an empty tin can that showed up when he was 7. His Auntie Paula and Uncle Victor had left him all alone, as all kind must, to fend for himself after that. When Artie met Una, he'd scowled at her for not having a catcher yet. Then he'd walked away with his head tipped a bit too high, leaving Una to wonder how kind he really was. Jane stopped dribbling and stared wide-eyed at Una. Una snapped back to attention with a shove of wild curls behind her ears. Oopsie, sorry, I get distracted sometimes. I'm Una Oliver. Liza is my granny. Granny? Liza never said anything about family, and I've known her my whole life. Jane stared at Una a little too long. Una fidgeted with the hem of her t-shirt and watched beads of sweat roll down Jane's long arms. She tried to come up with a story. Auntie Joan and Uncle Clyde had taught her well to lurk on the outside of circles like a cobweb in a corner, just close enough to catch kindness and do the first good deed to get the ball rolling, but never close enough to be remembered, never close enough to find friends. When people remember you, it leads to questions about who you are and why they're there. They'll look closer. They'll see the magic's light, Uncle Clyde had warned. Nons must believe the magic of kindness begins in themselves. That's how it spreads, after all. In fact, Una never went to a place where another kind witch called for them. And Granny Liza was the only witch Una had ever heard of who stayed in one place permanently. Welcome to the Show Don't Tell podcast, Stacy. It is so awesome to have you here.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, I was really excited to talk about these pages. So they are from, all right, I really want to read out just this pitch for a second, because when I asked Stacy to tell me a little bit about her book, first of all, this page that she submitted is an important scene. Where in the book is it though, Stacy? Is it like sort of near the beginning?
Yes. So this is early on. I believe it's right at the beginning of chapter 3. So it's a really important scene where we start to meet some of the major characters that are going to be a big part of the story.
Yes. Oh, chapter 3. I mean, I like to say that chapters are relatively arbitrary in terms of where we cut them. However, chapter 3 is a really important one because it's psychologically or mentally the chapter that kid readers and adult readers and reviewers and publishers will decide whether or not they keep reading. So it's really super important. We're going to get to it in a second. I just want to say this is one of the best blurbs or one of the best summaries I've read in a long time. And I'm going to read it for everybody. And then I'm going to talk about what you do here that is show don't tell that makes it really great. And then we're going to talk about how to bring that into the one page that you sent.
Okay. Awesome.
All right. So here goes. This is what this book is about. I asked in 250 words or less, what is your book about? And this, I don't know whether this was heavily edited or not. It's really good. 12-year-old Una Oliver is one of the kind witches who travel the world undetected, spreading kindness to nons who are non-magical folk in need. As a young witch in training, she must learn from her guides, Auntie Joan and Uncle Clyde, until her kindness catcher comes and she ventures off alone. Kind witches may never stay together after all, for risk of exposing the magic. So when the town of Puke, New Hampshire, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, calls to Una and her aunt and uncle for help, they unpack their bags at the Wish Cafe under the distrustful eye of the crotchety owner, Granny Liza. But Puke proves to be a challenge, needing more kindness than most towns, as a shadow slowly spreads overhead. And the always optimistic Una finds herself accidentally making friends with Jane and Dill, despite the kind witch rules that forbid such things. With each mistake she makes, Una's kind deeds unravel, causing her quirky love of speaking in idioms to wreak havoc on the town as literal events. Raiding cats and dogs is nothing compared to a tempest in a teapot or skeletons in a closet. Together with Jane, Dill, Joan, Clyde, and even Granny Liza, Una races to spread kindness and correct her chaos before the ever-growing shadow of doubt covers the town for good, causing Una to discover that sometimes the best way to spread kindness to others is by being kind to yourself first. Okay, I love all of this. If I was coaching you in terms of for an actual pitch, I'd tell you to take out all the names, but let's just ignore like the technical piece for now, because you really want to focus on Una. You can say, she meets friends without naming them. It just doesn't, it's hard for people to digest. But I want to say what you did really well was getting specific. You were so specific and, even not just saying using idioms, but you use ones and we can already imagine them. The naming of the town of Puke is just my absolute favorite thing. I think I laughed out loud. If I didn't, I maybe gasped. It is so fun. It evoked all kinds of negative things, really, for me. I mean, I'm somebody who suffers from severe motion sickness, so anything puke is kind of on the table at any moment. But, it's not a good association. And then you immediately give the town that ick factor that they need help. How did that come about? How do you even feel? This is middle grade and gross humor is totally welcome. How did that come about?
So Puke, New Hampshire, to my knowledge, does not actually exist, but Pike, New Hampshire does exist. And it's a town that I've been to many times. We have family up in that area. And so it inspired me with one, its beauty and just the fabulous town itself, which is full of very happy people, I should add. That's fun. But just when I first saw it, the name Puke came to mind. Just it made me laugh out loud too, to be honest. And it had that connotation, of it's just a town in need. It really is.
Yeah, it's a town in need. And Una's here to help.
Yeah, and in the story, it kind of used the setting as character in a way too. So it really kind of comes to life a little bit. So we had to give it the right name.
Absolutely. Well, I think you've nailed it. It's very unique. And I love that you're using setting as character. And in a magical realism story like this, you're also using magic as character, hopefully. So I love to say, that we're unfolding it. And it's nice to have when I'm jumping in just for one page, I need a little bit of information about the magic, because I've got to say, I've seen, don't take this the wrong way, because it's not meaning that it can't be done. There's only there's only two stories in the world, right? Somebody goes on a journey or somebody comes to town. So it's not a bad thing, but I do see a lot of sort of what I say comes true in middle grade stories, and, there's power in your words type things. But this feels different because it's specific. And so you've done a great job, from what I can see, of making sure that it's very specific, and that we don't just blow past it and think that it could be a coinkydink, right? Like that it could be a coincidence that what she says comes true. This is going to be like raining cats and dogs is literally going to happen, and things like that. So that is really awesome, because it's a big mistake that a lot of writers make, especially in middle grade, is that their magic is too subtle, and you want it to be fun and you want it to be weird, like make a splash. This is not real life, and it should be a lot of fun. And yeah, when it's too subtle, it's hard to track and it doesn't stand out and it feels so specific. I'm actually dying to read it. It reminds me of, and again, not in a bad way, the Amelia Bedelia stories. I know you write picture books as well, but do you remember those? I'm dating myself now. Amelia Bedelia literally does, heat up a can of soup, and she puts a can of soup inside the pot and doesn't understand why that's bad, right? Like, and it's interesting because I think you're going to really encourage readers, young readers, to be fascinated by language, because there are a lot of things that we literally say. And my very long and arduous journey to becoming a book coach and doing all things writing, I became fascinated really early on with those types of things, or homophones, or things like, why is English like this? So it can be so absurd. And middle grades are still deciding what they think of language. So I believe that this premise is going to intrigue them, get them hooked. Good job. Okay. Every piece in this blurb is doing double, triple duty. We want to bring this page up to that level of detail, or at least this scene, if not this page. I must say, one of the things that's difficult in this page is that you're introducing new characters and you're introducing backstory, right? So I'm not sure what surrounds it, but I do know that it can't all go on the same page, right? So what have we learned in chapters 1 and 2 about this premise that they can't be together? Do we know that already?
We do know that so the kind witch is really, once they get their kindness catcher, which is like a tool that kind of helps shine the light of need on people that really need it. And it kind of calls to each kind witch differently. And our main character in the story doesn't have hers yet. Normally they get them as a young child, and then they kind of go off and do their own thing, kind of lurking on the shadows more so. They're not supposed to draw attention to themselves, things like that. Una has taken a lot longer than normal to find her kindness catcher, or for it to find her. So she's still with her guides, and she calls them aunt and uncle, but they're not actually her aunt and uncle. That's just kind of the terms that
yeah.
And so she is still searching for this. And then in the first few chapters, it's really finding this new town, coming to this new town that has really been calling to them. And it's through this Granny Liza character, because she's struggling immensely with the whole town in general. And so this is unusual for more than one kindness to really, a kind witch to be in the area together, unless you're in training, sort of, so you can be with them then. So they're all together now in this town, and the first 2 chapters really set the setting very much so, and Joan, Clyde, and Granny Liza, and you get to know Una's quirky personality a bit, because she is not used to actually socializing with people. She doesn't do it all that well. I mean, honestly, this takes after me as a kid. I would say the most random things. And I did use idioms a lot because I thought they made me sound more grown up. I didn't even know.
Oh my goodness. You're my people. You're my people.
And so you get that quite a bit. And so when this chapter rolls around, it's really when she meets some of the children for the first time in the town. And she doesn't know how to interact with them because she never really does typically. And it's a very awkward scene for her because she's thinking these rules in the back of her mind, like, I can't make friends with people. I can't really be noticed. But then she also kind of wants to. You get to see this interest in her kind of peaks a little bit with these kids in town.
Yeah, and I love that. And the bucktooth and bratty Artie Boyles, whose catcher was an empty tin can. Again, you've really, I mean, I don't know anything about your magic, but I know that if my catcher was an empty tin can, it's pretty lame, right? It's not the best. So yeah, that showed up when he was 7. So even though she kind of admires it, she's like, wow, I hope I don't get that, right? Like that one's really obvious. And you've chosen some smart things around it. It conveys exactly the mood that you're going for. I think it's actually really masterful how you're using this. And you also did a good thing here when we're introducing a new character. That's the time to introduce a detail or two, right? Not a full description, not all, 10 pages, and not the third time we meet him, but the first time he's mentioned, right? So perfect execution there. Okay. So I asked some questions here, but I think we probably know this already, that she doesn't have a catcher. It's part of her quest, right? But here, you do have a point of view issue here. And I want to ask you what point of view that you're writing from. Is it Una's point of view in this chapter, or is it Omniscient?
So it is Una's point of view in the chapter.
Good choice.
Yeah, she is trying to remember the time she met Artie, but it's there because one of her rare interactions with another kid, and it happened to be a kind witch. But as she's actually speaking in the present moment with Jane.
We'll be right back.
Is your podcast driving real results, or does it feel like a lot of effort with very little return? If you're a podcaster using your show to grow your business, then Podcasting Amplified is the podcast for you. You may have launched expecting listeners to flock in, but instead you're stuck on a handful of downloads while juggling recording, editing, promotion, and wondering what's missing. Well, Podcasting Amplified delivers no fluff episodes packed with real-world tips and strategies on positioning, recording, growth, and turning your podcast into something that actually supports your goals. So search Podcasting Amplified on your favourite podcast app today and start building a podcast that gets results.
So we can't know why he's scowling if you're in Una's point of view. So just watch that. It's a really subtle thing. And I know Omniscient point of view is really not that popular unless you're writing fairy tales in middle grade right now. It's just very difficult to do well. Okay, this explanation is a bit of a mouthful. In show don't tell, it's always better to show what is there versus what isn't there, right? So flip it. So here we're saying when Artie met Una, he had scowled at her for not having a catcher yet. So she can't know why, but she can guess why. But try this because it's what she doesn't have, right? So that is very difficult for even adult readers, let alone middle grade readers, to picture something that isn't there, right? So try something like, he scowled at the empty space beside her where a catcher should be by her age, or something better. So if you just see, it's a very subtle thing, but if you're telling us what isn't there, we have nothing to picture and it's very difficult. So they'll just kind of blow by it and it won't be as effective. Okay. Then we meet Jane, right? So we're talking with Jane. I assume that we've mentioned her earlier. So I'm just checking that, flagging it just in case, because it was jarring for me because I hadn't seen her, but that's because I'm jumping into a page, which is kind of fun. And you're saying, yes, she's talking with Jane. I just want to point out to you, you're just masterful with this, with the shove of wild curls behind her ears. You're using excellent, strong language. It's really effective. It conveys such a fun vibe. Good job. So don't take these things out. I mean, this literally shows us, it demonstrates her renewed focus and her determination. Excellent. So here, Granny, Liza had never said anything about having any family. And I've known her my whole life. This here, Liza never said anything about family. I just had to read it twice to make meaning. It would probably make more sense if I had read before and after, but I'm trying to get my grounding. But just a suggestion to make it easier to read, adding a couple of words. Una fidgeted with the hem of her t-shirt and watched beads of sweat roll down Jane's long arms. Okay, this is super dramatic. And again, but I'm not sure it makes sense unless there's somewhere hot.
It is supposed to be really hot there. There's no
Okay.
air conditioning. It's this old cafe, and it's summertime.
Okay. So that does make sense then. I was like, if you're just trying to convey like nervousness or stress, I'm like, it's a little over the top that we've got a child who's sweating profusely. But yeah, no, that's awesome. I just wanted to check that. And again, we'll know that. Okay. So I would say the same thing as in your blurb. There's a lot of names on this page, and that's partially why you're having trouble with it, because you want to show us all the names. And it's something called character soup, right? Like when we just meet everybody, it's hard. So you've got to focus, you've got to just carefully eliminate what you don't need, right? So in this case, I would say her aunt and uncle, right? Just because you have so many names, and you could remind us of those at some other time, but I would simplify this one. Auntie Joan and Uncle Clyde had taught her well to lurk outside of circles, installing herself like a cobweb in a corner. I actually really love this too. And I know you came here for advice and I'm telling you what you're doing well, but it's actually really good. There's so much about this cobweb, there's the catcher metaphor, and then the cobweb is literally a catcher of things. And so, you're doing a lot of work here, which is great. I'm not clear on what she wants in the scene by now. So here's what I like to say as a broken record. What does your character want, right? Do you know what she wants in this scene?
To be honest, I think she is unsure entirely what she wants to help. She wants to show her independence, I think, as a kind witch, and be able to help and not have to solely rely on her aunt and uncle. But she also wants to interact with the towns, with these two children, the first one, Jane, that came in, and she's torn slightly. So she's trying to interact, but also not interact.
And I think, okay, so here's the crux of it, because I mean, we're coming on here just looking at one page, so I could be way off base, but here's what I see happening, because if you are, okay, the way that we're answering a few of these questions, so Una is awkward and, has this internal dialogue and is struggling, right? That doesn't mean that she doesn't want something. That doesn't mean that she doesn't have, it's like when people say, okay, I want to write an introverted character, and then they write this wallflower who doesn't do anything. And they say, it's me. And I say, yeah, but you have opinions and thoughts. You might not say them out loud. You're not going around and instructing people what to do, but you still make the decision when you decide to sit something out, right? So we have inner dialogue here. This is what's missing for me in this scene. If you say, I think you need to decide, especially by chapter 3, if we say she's not sure what she wants, the problem is the reader won't be sure either, because we become her. And if we don't want anything, then we don't need it, right? And we won't care as much. So the reader won't care as much about Una's plight if she doesn't know what she wants. I think you really need to choose something. And just so you know, when I say, what does your character want? To be a good person and to follow the rules is not enough to carry. And I wish you could see Stacy's head shaking. Yes, I know. It's not enough to carry a story. So even though you've got all these cool things, we've got to have a stronger character arc in terms of, or a stronger character motivation in terms of what she wants. Because otherwise she's just kind of floating through here. So what was missing for me was her inner thoughts or inner dialogue, because she's not trying to do anything. So which makes her an observer in the scene. And that's a tough place for your character to be in. So despite that, all of the cool things would probably carry it, but it'll be a lot stronger if you solve that. Does that make sense?
It does. It absolutely does. Yeah. I'm brainstorming right now what I think would be
okay. So let's brainstorm, because we need her to react to this. Okay. So just close enough to catch kindness and do the first good deed to get the ball rolling. So let her react to this. Okay. It's super important. Slow this down, right? So she says, I'm supposed to not make friends, and I'm trying to do that. But what does she think of that? Does she believe it?
This part, yes, she does still believe, because she is so dedicated to being a kind witch. And I think really, when you ask me the question, what is her purpose? I immediately think she wants to make her mark in this town. I feel like this is where she thinks there's a lot of problems here. I'm going to be the one to fix this. I can do this. I'm going to show them what I can do.
And what is the reward there? Is it that she's hopeful that she'll finally get her catcher? Like, is that how you get it?
Well, the catcher technically comes to you or comes to the witch in here, it chooses you. And so she is just, I think, so antsy and ready to do something. She's tired of being the student. She's tired of having to kind of let her aunt and uncle take the lead. She really wants to make the mark, and she's going to try to do it without her catcher. And she's just going to try to start doing good deeds all on her own, which kind of adds to the problems that she encounters. So I feel her true motivation here is independence, showing that I can do this. She's a very optimistic character as well. And so awkwardly optimistic. So she's going to just kind of go out and do things all on her own. So I think that is really her motivation. And so she's hearing these things that Jane, she's meeting Jane and she's intrigued by her, but she's also trying to think, look, don't be friends with her because that will ruin your plan to really make your mark and to make this town better.
So I love that you have now a little bit more of her motivation. I want to know, what does she want out of that? Sure, I want to make my mark. What does that mean? What does she think that she will get? I mean, she's got something to prove. She's literally doing it without a catcher. But what are the consequences? What does she believe will happen if she never gets a catcher? Right? This is like such a great theme for middle grade because I've been through it with all my children. And what if I never go through puberty? What if it never arrives? What if all the things, right? Like that's such a great thing. And I think that this is going to be really identifiable. What if I never get a catcher? But what are the consequences? Do you know?
No, actually, I never really, because in her, she even makes a statement once that she's never heard about kind witch who didn't get their catcher. So, and I think she kind of makes the phrase in a roundabout way. I guess they're not a kind witch after all. So it's this idea that if you don't get it, you're just not one of them.
Okay, right? So there's something, but yeah, so she might be trying to force that, but also what are the consequences if she fails and doesn't make her mark, right? So this is where stakes and consequences, we need to be thinking about that, and she needs to understand that, and she needs to articulate it in her thoughts. Okay, so for instance, when she's talking about the fact that auntie and uncle tell her she's not allowed to make friends, okay, let her have an opinion. So I've got some things brainstormed here, and I'll just read them out because I want to show you how different this will make this whole scene feel. Okay, it's super important. Slow it down with an action, a reaction, or an inner thought, right? Something to show us, or more than one thing to show us what it means for her. It's that important. So some examples. So if she said Una dropped her goofy smile, it wouldn't do for her to give Jane the wrong idea. She's all business, right? Like she's doing something to be like, okay, I'm not going to try to be friends with her. So therefore I'm doing something, I'm actioning that, right? Not just thinking about it. Or Una willed herself to drop her smile against her instinct. Jane probably loved swimming and reading and all the things she did, but friendships were not allowed. It shows her longing, right? Like these are not great. I brainstormed them in 30 seconds. You can do better. But you can see how different that is. We need to frame it, right? Or Una smiled at Jane, catching her eye. It would feel amazing to talk to someone about, I don't know what, X, Y, whatever makes sense in your world. But you could see she's starting to shift or starting to wonder or being curious about it, right? And at middle grade, we're very curious about lots of things. So what would this forbidden friendship thing be like? What would it be like? And what's cool about something like that and that transition that you're going to have her go through, I think, is that kids already know what friendship feels like, even if in that moment when you catch them with this book, they're feeling ostracized or on the outskirts, they still have had more than one friendship at this point in their lives, hopefully. And they know what's in store for her and they can already feel that. So make sure you're voicing those things, give it some space, because it's not just about, we think about why is this scene here? Well, it's here because she's going to meet the people that are eventually her friends. Okay, cool. But also on her character arc, what is she thinking? What is she wanting? How is this going to happen? What does she think about it? Or what are her stakes, real or imagined, if she crosses this line and does the thing she's not allowed to do? I don't know what right? Yeah. Like, I don't know what the consequences are, especially since in this case, I mean, she has an auntie and uncle, or they're not really her auntie and uncle, but we're going to find out why that is. But she has an auntie and uncle, but many kids her age are on their own because they're sort of booted out as soon as they get a catcher. So she's kind of lucky. But at the same time, I don't know what the discipline's like, right?
Yeah, no, and it's actually very welcoming. I mean, she actually really likes them, but she knows in the back of her mind that they're not all going to be able to stay together anyway. So she doesn't. She kind of keeps that like kind of contained. Like she won't admit that it's family. She loves them like family. That later on in the story, she really comes to realize that because she knows in the back of her mind that they're not supposed to have been together this long anyway. So it's it's a transformation moment for her later on.
That breaks my heart because I'm right at the cusp of empty nest here. Right? Like I've got one kid off to college and one kid graduating as a senior, and then I still have one that's just entering high school. But you can see it coming, and the thought that they were never meant to be together, and it's heart wrenching. I love it. It's such a cool premise. Okay. So then we start to never close enough to find friends. We go into this a bit of backstory, right? And I have lots of thoughts on this one because it feels out of place in this moment. But I'll just read it here and then we'll discuss it. So when people remember you, it leads to questions about who you are and why you're there. They'll look closer. They'll see the magic's light. Uncle Clyde had warned. Nons must believe the magic of kindness begins in themselves. That's how it spreads, after all. In fact, Una never went to a place where another kind witch called for them. And Granny Liza was the only witch Una had ever heard of who stayed in one place permanently. Okay. Do we have this information? Because I asked you at the beginning of this page. It feels like it belongs earlier.
Yeah, we do touch on, and definitely the part about Granny. Granny, we know she is the Wish Cafe actually is her kindness catcher, which comes out and they talk about early on. But for
that
some
is
reason,
so much more. That is so much more impressive than an empty king.
And so that's why she's the only one who stays put that they've ever heard of, because her actual catcher can't move. And so the need, and then you kind of come to understand why is there a catcher in this town? Why is it that important? And all that kind of comes out later on in the story. But you do learn that bit about Granny at the beginning. Now, the part about the questions, it's touched on lightly at the beginning of the story, but it's more in this chapter while she's processing these thoughts and talking to this child that she's realizing, wait, this is what Uncle Clyde had mentioned about this is. So I see your point, though. I should probably address it perhaps a little earlier on.
Yeah, it's great. I would move it earlier on. So this is a funny one because I really felt mixed things when I was looking at it because it felt so out of place, and we do drop into a flashback, and you did a great job of bringing us to the moment, and you are using showing. However, in this case, it's distracting because it's like you're avoiding talking about what Una's feelings are about things, right? So you're going somewhere else. And I'm like, the most interesting thing in this scene is understanding what she thinks, and you're skipping back to giving the power or the agency to somebody else and what they think. I wish you could see Stacy nodding.
But I've rewritten this scene so many times, and honestly, because I feel like I show a lot more in my other chapters, and this one just couldn't. It just didn't seem quite right. And it's so funny that hearing you say that, I'm like, aha, okay, that makes so much more sense. And how many times I've rewritten this, I don't think I could have come to that conclusion. So it's just,
you haven't decided.
Yeah.
You haven't decided. There's something missing. And so you can write it as many times as you want. And like I said, this is great showing detail, but you're bringing us somewhere else when really what you need to solve is why is it important? Because if you don't solve this in chapter 3, we're not going to keep reading, right? Even though it's super cool, we're not going to feel her pain. We're not going to feel her wants. We're not going to want to go on this class. So we need to resolve this. But you can do this without leaving the page and still make it pretty showy. So here's my suggestion. Instead of going back there and giving him the suggestion, try something like she imagined Uncle Clyde's eyes flashing if she dared take Jane home for supper. Not to mention that Jane would flee the moment she saw, I don't know, what's weird or embarrassing about her home, right? Bring us to the moment and keep us here. She's trying to decide her subconscious wants to be friends with Jane. So we don't want to leave the scene just yet. Leave her in her awkwardness. Leave her here and thinking the things that we think as young adolescent, terrified to make a new friend, especially if it's forbidden, or something better to show us what she thinks. Middle grade themes are still where kids fit in relation to their families, which is why I love the theme that you've chosen, that she can't stay with them, because the kids that are reading this will still feel part of that family unit. Like that's a big difference in themes that you see in YA, where really they don't kill the parents, get rid of them, right? Because they need to be on their own. But here they're still trying to figure out where they fit within the family unit. It's still a very important relationship, even though they're starting to see themselves as separate from their guardians. So you've really pushed the limits on that, and I like it. But show them this moment. She's starting to wonder if it makes sense to follow this. And the second part of this is the most important piece here, right? The second part of this, the first part being her uncle's thoughts on interacting with humans, and the second being the danger to them and making sure that your magic works, right? So is there a danger to them or being caught out of being identified as the kind? And what is that danger? Like, are they witches that might be burned at the stake? I don't know. What is the danger? I would name it.
So the danger for them is it's all of the purpose for them is really just to do this kindness. And they've been warned over and over, if for some reason we don't, or if problems don't, that there will be, kindness will not spread. There's this whole balance in the world, and they really kind of push that balance to keep the kindness afloat in every person, in every town, and all around. And so Una, her true belief is if they have any mistakes, all chaos will break loose in the world, and it'll be their fault. So they make a comment about how the kind witches have always just obeyed the rules, which is why Una is going to be the first to officially start to intentionally break the rules. So she does have this transition period from right at the beginning. She's super into it. She's like, this is the way it's always done. And she does start to say, why? Well, what happens if we don't? And this is when she starts to have the friends, and all of her idioms start to come true. She's fixing the problems, but she still wants to keep the friends. And that's when she questions it. What will happen if we break the rules? What if we just keep fixing these mistakes? Because mistakes are normal. That actually is part of her transformation, because they can't come up with a clear answer on it other than, well, the problems will keep happening. And then she realizes, well, problems happen anyway. We can still do kindness and we can still correct our problems. So that may not be a correct answer or a straightforward answer to your question.
No, it's actually perfect. I think that I'd encourage you, because again, we're back to this sort of, as a collective, the kind must do this, and she is one of the kind, and therefore, but here's what I would say. She needs to have something deeply personal that she is also trying to do. And if she doesn't have that, because that collective, I'm doing this for the good of the humankind, it just isn't strong enough to carry a book. It's awesome. And we often start there, but you've got to give her something little, even if she changes her mind and then later on, sees a bigger picture. At that age, at any age, humans are selfish inherently, and we're not going to do something. I like to say, what is the deeply personal reason your character is willing to go above and beyond what an average person would do, or an average kind witch would do, in order to get what she wants? Because she's going to be above average. She is not going to be usual. So why? Right? What is it that she wants personally, and what's in it for her? And if there isn't something in it for her, there's not going to be a payoff to your reader, because there won't be something in it for them. They become her. And if it's just to save the world and to strike a balance, that's huge. But then what's in it for her? And just think about that, right? I know we don't want our characters to be selfish, but inherently it makes more sense, and it's going to feel more real. Okay, so that was the second part, being the danger to the kind witches, right? So the second part is the danger to them. So what danger is there if they're discovered? Just that the magic won't work? I'm not sure. Will they lose it?
Yeah. And so that is again, they've said, well, this is the way it's always been. No one's ever done it. And it's just all these warnings. But she eventually does start to question. But it is the idea that you will lose all of your magic. You will not be able to do that. But it's all, what people have told her. There's no actual example that she's been able to find of someone who's actually had that happen to them.
And that's fine, but have her start with the assumption that she will lose all her magic and her aunt and uncle will lose their magic, right? And then that can turn out to not be true. That's very different. Like, It's very different from having a character lie to us and becoming an unreliable narrator. And I've actually explored that. It's funny, it keeps coming up this month with different writers, but it's very different to misdirect or to, if the character believes it's true, you've kind of answered the question, because otherwise people are going to say, well, what is going to happen? It's going to be too obvious, right? That really nothing's going to happen if you don't answer that question. So answer it early and answer it often, and just nip it in the bud, because otherwise readers are going to keep going, well, people are telling her that, but it's pretty obvious, right? So you want to kind of misdirect them into believing that if they are found out, that the magic will go away and that they will be stripped of their magic. And then what is their place in the world? They don't have family. They don't have permanent homes. They don't have the things that most of the kids reading this book will have or long for if they don't have. They don't have any of that. This is all they have, right? So think about it that way. Okay. The last page here, or the last paragraph here, I want to talk about, because I have no idea what this means, but I can't wait to find out. Okay. In fact, Una never went to a place where another kind witch called for them, and Granny Liza was the only witch Una had ever heard of who stayed in one place permanently. Okay, I actually have a bit of this backstory because you told me. But this, I'm not sure that this sentence makes sense. So it probably makes sense in your language, but see if you can work on it. Una never went to a place where another kind witch called for them. For them? Does she use they, them pronouns?
No, she does not. Actually, she's referring to herself, Uncle Clyde, and Aunt Joan, because they've always gone together as a unit, but it's not very clearly stated there. So
yeah, I think, in lots of ways, like when we're using third person close, right? We can hear her thoughts, but it's in third person. Keep it in her point of view, singular, as much as possible, right? And the reason for that, it's not incorrect to say we or they or whatever it is. I guess it's they because it's not first person. But yeah, number one, yes, it could be her pronouns instead of she, called for her. But also it just waters down the experience that the reader's having, because we are the person. So the deeper that you can stay into that one singular point of view, what is she doing? People will say this. I don't know if you've ever interviewed for a job, but people will be like, make sure you tell people what you did and not what collectively as a team did, right? I don't know. Have you ever given that advice? Yeah.
yes, actually.
Yeah. It's the same thing, because it's more impressive. It's more interesting. It's more focused. It's more on what you did. It's your agency. It's all the same reasons that we do it in a job interview. You want your point of view character to be talking about what they are doing, and we are only tracking what they are doing. I don't really care. Yes, I care, sort of, because they're in control, what auntie and uncle are doing. But at the same time, I want to be Una. I want to be Una.
Right. Yeah, that's great.
All right. So in this page, I would say it's a lot of her thinking about things and people who aren't here. So that's the piece where we're using flashbacks and things. I think what's missing is you need to stay in story present and explore that a little bit further. You're avoiding it because you haven't answered the questions yet. But you know how important the scene is, which is why it's the scene that you wanted to come on the show and talk about.
Right.
So if you can, bring some of these things into the moment and leave her in this uncomfortableness a little bit longer, that's the whole point, right? You're talking about, what it feels like. And I also know what it feels super awkward. I think at 50, I'm that same super awkward person in certain circumstances. I definitely, am the first one to say the pun or whatever, but I try to read my brand of humor going to be understood here. I tend to go to a lot of conferences and things so that I can be amongst people who will get me. But yeah, leave her in that awkwardness a little bit longer, because that's the whole point of your story, right? That's the whole character. Make her awkward and let her react to these things. And I think you're going to be able to fix the scene pretty fast. It might be more than one page. And that's okay.
No, that's great. That's exactly what I needed. It's funny when you look at something over and over and over again, you just start to see the same thing over and over and over again. And so this whole new perspective is incredibly helpful. Thank you.
Well, and I think you're so welcome. And I think, when we do revision, you're right. We're editing what's on the page. We don't always take a step back and say, okay, this is the page that isn't working. Why isn't it working? And what is it like that's missing? And that's a lot of the work that happens in like developmental editing, really. Is that sort of big picture, and is it all kind of working together? And it's the same reason, like, I really struggle with, people ask me about AI and things, because AI is often missing things. I can't edit something that you send me. This is not AI, but I'm not trying to compare it, but I can't edit something with AI because it can't do what you did on this page, which is have all of these specific things that came from your brain. In fact, everything is generic and general. There's nothing to edit. There's nothing to edit. It's perfect in its own boring way, right? And I think that's what happens when we go and revise a scene and we don't take that step back. You're trying to apply all the rules without solving that central question that's missing. It's going to fall flat, right? It's not going to work. And so you can make it perfect in its own boring way, right? Like not that this is boring, but it is missing what you want it to have, which is this. It's such an important pivotal scene. She starts, it's almost like if you think of it as, I know it's friendship, but you think of it as a romance. It's those early stages of, should I? Oh, it's forbidden, right? Like it's not that different, and not to make it weird, but it's not that different from a human perspective and starting a relationship. It's that awkward dance.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it's missing in this scene. And I'm really excited to go back and edit this one again.
Well, I'm glad. I hope we lit a fire for you and you're able to go after this episode and fix the scene. Let us know how it goes. I'd love to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely will. Thank you. I really appreciate this. It's been phenomenal.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Show Don't Tell Writing Podcast with me, Suzy Vidori. It is my absolute honor to bring you the straight goods for that book you're writing or the book that you're planning to write. Please help me keep the podcast going by helping people find us. You can subscribe to the podcast and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you're listening to show how much you enjoy the show. That's how other listeners will find us. Also, visit suzyvidori.com/newsletter to hop on my weekly inspired writing newsletter list, where you'll stay inspired and be the first to know about all the upcoming training events and writing courses that happen in my community. Want my eyes on your writing? Submit a page of your current draft for a chance to come on the podcast at the link in the show notes. I'd love to chat with you about your writing in my always positive, incredibly supportive way so that you can make great strides towards your writing goals. I'm here to cheer you on. Remember, that book you're writing is going to open doors that you haven't even thought of yet, and I can't wait to help you make that it the absolute best it can be. See you again right here next week.